Welcome back. Now, George, policy. That's the question. Do you think that the policy, which the government has been promising us for quite some time, we've been talking about fiscal consolidation even before we met the 2021-2022 document, which is the biggest one yet, and a chunk of that is going into loan repayments. Do you think that can be the driver for us being considered as low risk level when it comes to debt?
Elijah, our problem basically has been policy all along.
Yes.
Remember when Yatani came into office, one of the things that he mentioned was he was going to deal with our debt challenge, as it were. And in fact, he went ahead and set up the debt management office in Treasury. We've not seen much happening on that direction. But I think, as it were today, that is something that has to be addressed. I think last week we saw something from that direction where government came up and said that they are freezing all salary increments for the next 2 years,
yes,
which is a good pointer to where we want to be. Remember, Elijah, I told you earlier on that this is a bitter pill that we must find time to swallow, either now, but when it is still at least sweetened, or in the future, when it will be very bitter for us to swallow. Our debt portfolio today, Elijah, is not sustainable, even if you look at, in fact, if you look at our budget making process that we have just concluded, a bigger percentage of our revenues are going into debt financing, which
yes,
is not a very good economic direction that you want to take. If you are using all your revenues to finance your loans, then definitely you're not going to grow economically. And when you don't grow economically, then therefore you cannot create jobs and you cannot create enterprises. Therefore, what that means is that eventually your revenues will start going down and you will not be able to repay your debt. So it is something that government must start addressing as early as this. I think IMF has been in liaison with the government and they have tried to push in some of this advice that I think we eventually have to swallow. Serious Education mentioned something the other day, Elijah, which some people thought was just maybe a thought on the wayside. But for me, when I interrogated that statement, I realized that government probably is taking the direction that IMF wants them to take. Remember when Serious Education said that parents should be prepared now to start paying school fees? And that is an area that probably government will save some money in terms of recurrent expenditure. Remember the SAPs in the 1990s?
Yes.
When we used to find
Well, I think something must have happened on George's end. Let me just confirm whether we have Sid in the house. Sid, can you get me?
Yeah, yes, I can hear you.
Fantastic. As we wait for George to get back into that conversation. Sid, let's move on to the last issue because I actually wanted us to jump into that last issue once George was done with that. Now, Kenyan households are staring at a high energy prices yet again after the Energy and Petroleum Regulatory Authority, EPRA, on Friday last week increased the fuel surcharge from 2 shillings and 92 cents per kilowatt hour last month to the current 3 shillings and 63 cents, which is the highest level since May 2019. According to APRA, the increased reliance on fuel-powered generators to produce electricity due to the low water levels in the hydroelectric dams and costly petroleum sparked the rise in the surcharge. Now, the monthly electricity sales average 742.34 million kilowatt hours based on the latest data, meaning homes and businesses will pay at least 527 million shillings to Kenya Power to compensate thermal electricity generators. This as motorists in Nairobi are paying 127 shillings and 14 cents per litre on petrol from 107 and 9 cents in March, representing a 20 shillings and 5 cents increase, with this expected to pile upward pressure on inflation. All right, let's look at that data this morning in terms of that 50 kilowatt per hour charge, and we're tracing it all the way back to 2015, and you can actually see that it started from 531, now it's at 809. That's meaning it has been rising throughout that period, and it continues to rise despite this latest review. Good. Let's cross over to see exactly what the trend has been in terms of fuel in the country as well. You're going to see the same trend as well, all the way from 2015 to where we are right now in 2021. The general trend has been up. Sid, I mean, if we go back to 3 months ago, I mean, the only thing we've been getting from EPRA said is that we are reviewing upwards. It is increasing to the point that we even have to go through an uproar in the country for them to delay a review in fuel prices in the country. But they revised it last month, which is what we're experiencing this month. Now they've come back again and they've told us you gotta pay more per kilowatt hour of electricity that you're using, again by 3 shillings. Said, is there a concerted effort in any way to get the prices of energy in this country subdued?
Wow, Simba, that's a good question. I mean, you put me really under the spotlight there. But I mean, what plans do the government really have in place to reduce costs of power? We've only seen an upward trajectory as of this year.
Yes.
As you said, fuel prices have gone up by almost, we're paying close to 122 shillings per litre in Nairobi. Some of the reasons EPRA had then justified the fuel hike. This was, I think, in March of this year, was based on the fact that the regulations provide a predetermined formula in determining the cost of landed fuel in our country.
Yes.
In the formula, some certain elements of the formula include costs of the landed cost of petrol, inputs during the supply chain, storage, distribution, supplier margins, taxes, etc. And they claim that was a reason why fuel prices went up. And you would agree with them to a certain extent, because the cost of landed fuel did go up generally, and that was just because of prices of oil going up globally. So if you were just to take one component of their formula, then you would you tend to agree with an upward revision in prices.
Yes.
But then there are other components that form part of this formula of theirs, which you can put question marks all over, and actually you try and figure out, and you see close to 40-something% of the prices goes in taxes. So the government is collecting a lot of tax from these, from fuel and electricity. So if there are any other plans in place, the only other thing I would say is the least cost power development plan, which is a 20-year rolling plan that was recently reviewed in 2018. So it's a plan that's going to be running from 2017 to 2037.
Yes.
And if you see some of the things the task force in this least cost power development plan recommended, was renegotiation of power purchase agreement to large power plants to make sure these agreements introduce operational flexibility and optimize our energy costs, and some of the measures government is taking is we've recently seen President Uhuru Kenyatta implementing a task force to review these power purchase agreements. A move that is expected to bring significant changes and policy shifts in the energy sector.
Yes.
And one of the main reasons why the task force has been set up to review these power purchase agreements is if you just look at almost Kenya Power's operational costs, not the costs of doing sales as per the financial statements, and close to around 28 billion shillings. And during that period, last financial year, during that period, 47.5 billion shillings was paid in capacity charges to power producers. And what I mean by capacity charges is, these are costs incurred and are attributed to just idle capacity charges to compensate the power generators for electricity generated, but not utilized at the same time. So we as consumers are incurring costs, increased costs, based on something even that you don't consume. So we hope that these review of these power purchase agreements and also Parliament's intervention on the same, we hope that this will help at least have some impact to reduce these capacity charges and just the cost of generating power from or Kenya Power buying power from private entities to supply the national grid.
Yes.
And hopefully, based on all this, and our attempt to diversify into more renewable sources of energy, we hope that this would help reduce power costs in the country. But again, that's a long-term view. Short term, we are going to be paying the extra 360 cents per kilowatt.
Pretty much. Sid, let me cross over to George this morning. George, in 2 minutes, if you may, welcome back. We apologize for the technical hitch that you faced in your office this morning. George, I will ask you the same question in 2 minutes if you can, because that's the only time that we have left this morning. George, this is another review on top of another review by an organization or by an entity that is under investigation into how they price energy prices in the country. Is this warranted, George?
Elijah, energy costs in Kenya are one of the highest in the region.
Yes.
I can tell you for sure. And that is why you realize that most of our enterprises cannot compete globally. If you pair up an enterprise in Kenya with an enterprise in Ethiopia, in Egypt, in Asia, and in China, then our enterprises cannot be able to compete effectively with the other enterprises. And one of the critical issues is the power cost. Elijah, if you look at the landing cost of a barrel of oil at our Mombasa port, and look at the eventual pump price at the petrol station, the variance is so huge. In fact, 60% of what we pay at the pump goes towards taxes and other levies. In EPRA's calculations, in EPRA's pricing, remember there is the consumption charge, there is fuel cost adjustments, there is forex adjustments, there is ERC levy, there is VAT. There is one levy. There's so many levies that are loaded onto the price of fuel that eventually what you consume, 60% of it goes towards taxes. Elijah, that is not sustainable, unfortunately.
Yes.
Government is trying to look at easy ways of getting revenues from this sector, but I think this will work. Will work against them in the long run, because if enterprises cannot function, if enterprises cannot make money, then they will not be able to pay taxes that are required to pay, and therefore they will not be able to employ, and therefore eventually government will lose revenues on this. The reason why EPRA was brought into being was to control energy cost in the economy. But I think, as it were today, they have done the reverse. If you are paying 127 shillings for a liter of petrol, Elijah, in an economy like ours, I think we are not headed in the right direction. And EPRA must sit down and look at their figures again, so that these figures, this price that we are paying, are sustainable. The other thing that I must mention, Elijah, is that fuel costs go into every product that you consume, or every product that the household consumes on a day-to-day basis. And if food costs are that high, then it gives us what we call either imported inflation, but for ours it's not imported inflation. For ours it would be fuel cost or fuel cost inflation, so that the price of a basket of goods will go higher day in, day out, as we adjust the fuel cost. And that leaves the population with a very small disposable income that they cannot be able to reinvest and grow the economy. So, Elijah, in a nutshell, this is not the way to go. And EPRA must start looking at their figures again and bring our fuel cost to manageable levels, not only to households, but to enterprises that care is looking into to bring in more revenues into our coffers, Elijah.
Pretty much. George said, thank you very much for taking your time to talk to us this morning. And that has been our economic review. My name is Simba. Elijah Charles can get tech those gentlemen online at Metropole TVKE across all their social media platforms. I am at Kiage Simba. Good morning.